Today we'll be making shredded barbecue beef. It's going to be in a crock pot, so I always use these slow cooker liners that make it so much easier than trying to clean out your crock pot when you're done. So first line your crock pot with a slow cooker liner, and then pretty much anything that's large and you're mainly looking at a roast. Trim off the excess fat that's here. Trying to get as little meat with it as possible. This knife isn't best suited for this job, but it'll work just fine. I apologize if there's any background noise. We do live on a very busy street. So when it comes to cutting up meat, especially like this, trying to cut out as much of that fat as you can is the best way to go. There's a huge line of fat that kind of goes on the end of this, so that's what I'm trying to work on cutting off. And trying to cut off as much meat, viable meat, as I can. When cutting up raw meat, I always suggest to wear gloves. It makes it so much easier for cleanup later. You won't be dealing with getting meat under your fingernails and such like that. And if you hear any other strange noises in the background, we have guinea pigs. So alright, that's mostly fat. There's a tiny bit of fat right here, or grizzle. You want to trim off as much as you can. You don't have to trim it all off. Some fat is actually good. So, start by cutting off your meat into strips. There we go. I'd say about 1.5 inches wide. Yes, I'm going with the grain right now. Doesn't really matter which way you're going, with or against, at this point. That's fat, so that's gone. And then come back to cut into about a 1-inch strip period. So, alright, so we've cut into 1-inch strips. Remember, a little bit of fat is okay. Go ahead and throw it into the crock pot. Now we're working right now with a dry crock pot. We will add all of our seasonings and other marinade bits here in a little bit. We first want to get that meat in there. And so we're basically going after 1.5 to 1 inch long strips here. And we have probably enough meat to make it be that we don't have to cut these strips in half, but I am, just because you get more of your marinade on your meat. Let's just put it that way. You can preheat your crock pot. It's not necessary. At the start of me cutting up the meat, I did turn on the crock pot. We're cooking at low, and when it comes to meats, I've always said low and slow is the best way to go. Just cutting off a little bit of fat here. Now some of those smaller pieces, they will kind of disintegrate a little bit, but that's alright. And I think that's okay. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, meat's in the crock pot. we're on to the next bit. So let me go ahead and get all this stuff cleaned up, and we will be back for the next bit. Remember, always clean as you go, and since we're doing raw meat here, make sure to sanitize your work surface and clean your cutting board right away, otherwise the beef or the meat ends up staining your board. Okay, that's it for now. Hold on. Alright, so beef is all in the crock pot. Clean up the area and with a sanitizer, and we're on to the sauce, the marinade, whatever you want to call it. I'm using a large can of crushed fire roasted tomatoes, cut almost all the way through on the can except for a tiny little bit. I use a bottle opener there to kind of bring that last little bit of the lid up, and then dump the can into your stuff. There we go. Now we do have quite a lot in this can left. Don't worry, we will take care of this. Reason I'm wearing gloves is I have a couple of cuts on my hand, and I really don't want to be unsafe. So, next up, barbecue sauce. I use Sprouts barbecue sauce. It contains no high fructose corn syrup or any of the other bad ingredients that you normally find in most barbecue sauces. Because this one is from Sprouts, it's a bit more expensive, but I think it's worth it in the end, and you don't have all the crap, which is what we're trying to cut out. Alright, so I start off with about half a bottle of barbecue sauce. This one here is a roasted garlic barbecue. This is organic. That part's not really necessary for what we're doing here. You don't need to throw this part away. Don't worry, we will get the rest of this out. Now, this is not enough barbecue sauce, so I've got some more here. And this particular one is an apple smoked barbecue sauce. I don't know if you can find this anymore. If you can't, that's okay. In reality, we're looking at an entire bottle of barbecue sauce here. So, yeah. Next up is, I think this is the most important part here, Kona Brewing Company Big Wave Golden Ale. It's one of the best golden ales I've ever had. This one comes straight from Hawaii, and instead of pouring it into our crock pot, we're going to pour it into our can of tomatoes, swish it around a little bit. We're trying to get all of that good tomato juice and parts and such off the sides of the can. So swirl it around as much as you are able to, and then pour it in. Yes, it froths up, but that's okay. And we've emptied out most of the remnants in the can. Again, do the same thing with barbecue sauce. And you don't need to put much in here, just enough to kind of cover the bottom, maybe the bottom inch or so at the most. Give it a good swirl around, get all that good barbecue sauce out of there. There we go. Careful when opening. It is pressurized. It is beer after all. You can make this without beer. I would say do beef broth instead, but I don't know. I think the beer's better. So, if you are unable to find an Applewood smoked barbecue sauce, they do make Applewood liquid smoke, and all you would need to do is just pour a little bit in there. What you're looking for is that Applewood flavor. My particular one's in a tuppy because my bottle broke when it arrived. Next up, we are going to reserve this last half of the beer. Yeah, that's only half left. And we're going to save it for later. When after the meat's cooked, we strain it, and I'll let you know from that point on. So we want more Applewood flavor, and so we're going to our Applewood smoked salt. This has a very salty taste as salts go, so you don't need to add too much to it, like very little as compared to a normal salt, that you would add. Next up, ground coriander. This adds a nice sweetness to it all, and it works very well with the flavors that we already have going. Next up is My Mix. If you're unfamiliar with the My Mix trio video, I suggest to watch at least the first part of that video. It does show you what My Mix contains, and since it's giving us our body, our base, our flavor, a healthy amount is perfectly fine. Next up, some dried chives. You can do fresh chives, is fine. Make sure they're nice and small, snipped well, not too very big. Dry chives is what we have just because of the convenience of being dry. I keep mine in an airtight container, keeps them fresher. And then last but not least, A1 steak sauce. I don't use specific A1, I use a generic. Either way is fine, it doesn't really matter. Pour the entire bottle in. I know it sounds like a lot, but we have a lot of meat here, and it's only a 10-ounce bottle, so it's not like it's too much. And since we have just a little bit more than a half a can of beer left, pour, ever so gently, a little bit of beer into the steak sauce, cap it up, give it a good shake, and then slowly open it. It will fizz, and pour out. You're looking to get the last little remnants of your sauces out of there. So, next up, let's move the beer aside and anything else that we don't want to get splattered out of the way. And I'd say use a pair of tongs. Careful not to pierce the outside of the bag itself. That is possible to do. I haven't done it yet, but like I said, just because I haven't done it doesn't mean it can't be done. And stir this about. Mix it as well as you can. Get as much of that meat coated with all of the sauce on it. And this will be cooking in the crock pot overnight. So do this the night before your event, your tailgate party, your tailgate party, your football party, whatever you guys are wanting to do this for. This video is being made around football season, so the idea was that somebody would take this to a football party. But you can use it whenever. Last time we did it, we cooked this up. It was a game night, and everybody loved it. And made sure that we had plenty of the Big Wave Kona beer on hand to offer our guests, because having the Kona beer with this is exceptional. It does come in a 12-pack cans, and that's what I end up getting, because by the time we're done, we're going to have at least one beer in here, and then the other 10 or 11, for your guests. So this is going to go for at least 13 hours. So we will be back, and we'll show you the next phase. That's it for now. This evening's intermission entertainment will be brought to you by our kitty Maggie, who just loves empty beer cans. And I do specify this is an empty can. I'm not giving my cat beer. But this is Kona Big Wave. Something that, be careful, you're gonna cut your tongue. There. Maybe not so much that way. There you go. It's better. Anyways, she loves beer, and for some odd reason, she loves Kona Big Wave. Not too sure why. Alright, sweetie, you're gonna cut your tongue. Be careful. Okay, Maggie, I say you're done. You're cut off. Yes, you are. I know you're looking for more. You'll be fine. Oh, thank you for photobombing. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, so it's been about 13 hours or so. It's best to let this thing go overnight. What I traditionally do is start off the meal, or start off cooking it after dinner, and then I come back to it the next day. So turn it off, and yeah, we will have some fat that's come to the surface here. That's okay. What we're going to be doing is removing the meat from the sauce, and I ended up adding another roast. I had another roast to add, and so I've actually got about 8 pounds of meat in here. We have a 6-quart Crockpot, and with all the juice and everything else, that's about as much as I would be willing to fit in here, is 8 pounds. As you can see, the beef has come out really nicely, I mean, it's nice. We've got what's called a spoodle. A slotted spoon or a pair of tongs work just fine. Don't worry about getting the tomatoes out with it too. That's perfectly fine. You won't have to remove them. They actually kind of enhance the meat a little bit, add some nice sweetness to it. I'm going to keep doing this off camera, and we'll be back with it all taken care of here. So we have our meat ready to go. The juice is back in the crock pot, and we've retained the bowl that we had for the juice itself. Now, shredding the meat. This meat is nice and hot. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of pairs of gloves, and this gives us a little bit of barrier between our fingers and the hot meat. I strongly suggest to go for at least 3 pairs of gloves. Yeah, you're going through a lot of gloves, but it gives you a really good thick layer. And all you really got to do is, quite literally, break apart the meat. And just kind of pull it. You don't want the grain itself very long. So as it breaks apart, try to pull that grain so it's no more than 1 bite size. Because the idea here is that you don't want long grain, you want short grain. If that makes sense. I hope it does. So this piece right here, you can see that the grain And how you can tell which way the grain goes is which way you break it up. When you break it up and you push on it, it breaks this direction and not, that direction. So, because it's breaking only side to side, we need to manually break it the opposite direction. Now, with meat like this, you can, with as much meat as we have here, you can utilize a cutting board and a knife, and it'll make it go a lot quicker. Especially if you don't want to, if you don't have the gloves and you don't want to get your hands dirty, or you just gotta, don't want to take the time to do this. Personally, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm fine with pulling it. It's just the difference between going chopped and pulled. So that's really up to you. I will come back when all of this meat is pulled, and we will go from there. Alright, so alternative to taking out a cutting board and a knife and getting all of that mess, you can take a knife and put it in your hand, and carefully cut towards your thumb. This takes some practice without cutting yourself. A serrated knife does help. That's you. So, cutting towards your thumb, you can be able to cut the meat, and again, you're trying to look for something that's about bite size. So when you're cutting against the grain like this, you definitely want to go for something that's about 3/4 of an inch or so, and this way you're not making a huge mess. Alright, so I have been able to cut / pull the vast majority of this meat. The last little tiny bit is just tiny little pieces. Really don't need to shred this stuff up. So I'm just going to pour it back in with the other. And then next up is to put all this meat. Okay, so since we've essentially added, when we had the strips, we had a certain area of the meat that was able to be penetrated by the juice. When we shredded the meat, there was a lot of meat that was in the center that was not exposed to that juice. So we want to expose that meat to the juice. So that's why it's going back in the crock pot for at least another couple hours. This particular time, I would say, keep it on, like, if you have a keep warm setting or a warm setting on there, that's ideal. If you don't, a low setting is perfectly fine. I'd say maybe turn it off every so often so that you don't overcook the meat and make it be, inferior meat, kind of ruining all your hard work here. And notice that I didn't dump all the meat back into the crock pot. That would be a really bad idea. You get all that hot liquid everywhere. Kind of just sprinkle it in there handful by handful, and you're able to not splash everywhere. So I got the vast majority of it in there. Let's take our one layer of glove off here, because we are just covered in juice, and take our scoop and push all that meat back in there. Put the cover on and turn it on. Note that the beef has definitely absorbed a lot more of the juice, which is exactly what we want. This particular batch is fairly juicy. However, if you've run into an issue where you don't have enough juice left over, this is what your other half of your beer was for. And you know, when keeping the beer in the fridge, just put a little bag over it, and then put a rubber band over that as well, and it keeps it fairly well, yeah, it keeps it better than it being just straight open. We don't personally need any beer in this one, but you know, you can be able to utilize that beer if you need it. So, serving. Use a pair of tongs. You can serve it on rolls. You can serve it just plain. I would use a spoodle or tongs or something like that to sorry, we have a dog in here that is really interested in our beef here, but there we go. The best thing to do is serve with Hawaiian King sweet rolls. They make the whole flavor just really come together. It's quite nice. You've got the Kona beer and then Hawaiian sweet rolls, and you know, you can always serve with a little bit of this sauce or just straight out regular barbecue sauce. So, hope you enjoy. Please like, share, rate, comment, and subscribe, of course. Thanks. Have a good one. So, we had a dog come on over, and he is very eager to try this shredded beef. And he was the one that was pretty much video bombing my video as I was trying to record. And luckily he is sitting and staying, and he's being good. And okay, buddy. Oh boy. Was that good? Was that yummy? Yeah. Oh, you're looking for more, aren't you?
Is it worth a high five? High five.
Oh boy. Good boy.